Welcome to Community Insight, a show about the family well-being movement. I'm your host, Valerie Frost. Across this field, there's growing recognition that what happens to families in the child welfare system isn't just about individual decisions. It's shaped by the structures surrounding them. And one of the least visible, but probably most influential parts of that structure is legal representation. For many families, especially Black and Brown families, system involvement doesn't just bring oversight. It brings a process that is difficult to navigate, where decisions move quickly and consequences are permanent. That raises an important question. When families enter the system, are they actually given a fair chance to navigate it, or does the outcome depend on the support they have along the way, particularly the legal support? Today's guest, Toia Potts, is a family advocate and organizer with Emancipate NC, co-founder of Carolina Parent Defenders, and a leader connected to the Black Mothers March. And just as a quick aside, the Black Mothers March will be taking place on Sunday, May 10th, Mother's Day, in DC. Okay, so Toia's work focuses on what happens when families have access to early, meaningful legal advocacy, and how that might change the trajectory of a case. Toia's backstory is that she was a young parent who had CPS involvement, but she did not get great legal representation and really didn't understand that side of things until she met a woman named Elizabeth Simpson. So I started the conversation by asking her to tell me more about how she and Elizabeth got connected. So Toia, I want to start with a moment that seems really important in your story. So you were already in the system, and at this point you connected with an attorney who became a key partner in your case. So can you take me back to that moment when you first met Elizabeth and what changed for you when she got involved?
Yes, so I originally met Elizabeth. I had gotten out of jail at the time, and I just knew once I got out that I was literally going to tell the whole entire community that, like, these people are really trying to take my children, and now they just threw me in jail, which is a whole different fight. And I didn't know anyone locally. I was just like, I'm going to email any organization who's doing criminal justice reform or any people who are already on the movement locally doing organizing work. And I didn't know who to reach out to. So I just started like Googling different places. I met her through Religious Coalition of a Nonviolent Durham. That was the name of the organization. And they would have like these community meetings, like healing circles, where people would just come together and talk about what could be done about the violence that was happening in Durham County. And Elizabeth just happened to be there. I met her through one of the leads of that organization. And Elizabeth didn't even have experience with doing family court. But when she came to one of my court dates, and my attorney who was supposed to be representing me wasn't adequately doing that. Like my whole entire family had showed up to court, right? They were supposed to testify, to speak on how they could be able to care for my children. And my attorney literally did not call any one of them to the stand. And these are family members that drove all the way from Georgia, thinking that they were going to get my children. So once she noticed that, in her mind, it was just like, I can do this better than that attorney is doing, even though she didn't have any background in that field of that courtroom. And when she came into my case, it was literally night and day. The attorneys that I did have, unfortunately, just did not fight. I never felt like they were advocating for me to get my children back. It was just like the routine of, well, DSS says this, you're going to have to do that. I could never get in touch with them. And when I had Elizabeth, like I tell people all the time, she definitely fought for my children as if they were her own.
What did it feel like for you to finally have someone advocating differently?
I feel like we built a relationship that was deeper than just like client and attorney. It felt like she really like understood, like, okay, this is a mom who is actively doing everything under the sun that DSS has asked her to do, and yet they are not placing her children with her. And so it didn't make me feel crazy anymore. Like, I'm just this person in this system, and all of these things are stacked against me, and there's no one like really advocating for me as a parent. And then I often would say, like, even if the system didn't advocate for me, you should still at least consider my family. Like I had a bunch of community support that were ready and actively willing to care for my children.
All right, so go back again if you can remember. 'Cause you talked about a relationship, that's engagement, right? And you met her at this meeting. Do you remember what she said? Like how did you know that you should invite her to that court case to see what was happening?
I think it was the fact that she was already in community with other people who were already like on the field, like in the ground, in the work, like hands on in the community. So I felt like my attorneys are not doing anything. So if there is anybody interested, that was literally like my cry for help. I literally was like, I'm just going to tell anybody who will listen to my story. And I'm normally like a very like chill. I don't talk much. I'm usually the listener, just like in the corner. But I knew that I had to start speaking out because it was just too many injustices within my case. And then, like I said, navigating the criminal justice system, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to fight in A&D court, and now I'm going to have to fight in superior court. Like, I need help. And I think it was just her willingness to even come and just show up that made me feel comfortable enough to be like, okay, this is somebody who actually is interested and is actually listening to what it is that I'm saying.
So I'm hearing that you've experienced different kinds of legal representation, and again, we've heard, the listeners have heard some of the things that maybe the court-appointed counsel was not doing, where Elizabeth came in and stepped in. Why do you think there was such a difference? Like, what do you think are the constraints on the attorneys you had at first? Is it knowledge, time, incentives?
I would say I definitely think that they have an overload of cases. I would also say that they work in that courtroom so much that it's just like everyone is friends. Like, I don't know any other way to put it. It's just like this buddy buddy system. And this is just my experience. It's just like we're all, you know, just routinely allowing people to not have access to their children. Like, it didn't matter what I did. You know, like I had a full case plan. I did everything under the sun before, the judge even said, like, these are the things you need to do. Once I even realized, okay, the GAL is recommending a parenting class or she's recommending this, I literally went and found all these services on my own, not from the help of my attorney, not from the help of anyone, because I didn't even feel like I had that help. But I say that to say, I feel like they're just overloaded with cases and they have one way of thinking. Like, this parent just doesn't want her children. Like, I could never get into contact with them. It would be an extreme struggle to just even get just a simple email. Like, my entire time throughout jail, I never seen my family attorney not once.
So let's go on the other side then. So you talk again. I'm going to keep pulling this word because, engagement speaks to me. This relationship. Elizabeth engaged with you, right? You had a relationship. So what happened at that point? What does a good attorney actually do day to day? What was she doing?
So my case had been going on for 2 years prior to Elizabeth. And so I mentioned earlier that I had multiple family members, right? There was a process that was supposed to be started within like the first 90 days. It's the ICPC paperwork. So when you're trying to get your children placed into a different state, they have to do like certain like home studies and they have to get in contact with the social services in that other state. I didn't even know that was a thing until Elizabeth came onto my case. And that was something, like I said, that was supposed to have been done within the first 90 days, but that didn't happen until 2 years into my case. And the social workers, my attorneys, they all knew I had family because like I had like grandparents, godparents, aunts, uncles. Like, I'm not talking about just like two people. It was like maybe like 8 people. And no one never mentioned it. It was just like they weren't willing to do that additional work, which then later caused my children to stay in that same placement of the foster parents instead of being placed with my family initially.
All right, but let's go back. So when Elizabeth came in 2 years later, what did she start doing?
The ICPC paperwork. That was like one of the first things she started to do, so that my children could get placed with family. I would have court on like Tuesday, right? I wouldn't hear from my attorney maybe the day before or that morning, Elizabeth would actually prep. We would talk about these things. We would have continuous conversations. I had her cell phone number. Like my other attorneys, I didn't have their phone number to contact them. And she was just very on top of just really fighting, like anything she could do in order to help.
I want to pause on that though, because you said, and I might have even said this earlier, you said
Mm-hmm.
she was fighting, but what
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like is that she didn't actually have a chance to fight forward for you because she was cleaning up backward first. Yeah, I just heard this phrase, how much justice can you afford?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How does that show up in cases like yours?
Mm-hmm. I honestly tell people that if I would have had Elizabeth at the beginning, I would have never lost my children. I would have never lost my children because my children would have been able to have been placed with family, from the beginning. Elizabeth would have advocated for the ICPC paperwork. And I always feel like, man, I was doing all this research, right? Because I'm like, no one is helping me. I don't even know where to go, how to start, what to do, right? I didn't see anything about ICPC paperwork. And I always think what if I would have just came across that information myself? But I didn't, right? But it's so unfortunate because I just know if I would have had her at the beginning, I would definitely still have my children today. And I had two attorneys prior to Elizabeth, two attorneys and three social workers.
So we can stay high level with this if this is okay
Mm-hmm.
with you. I do want to
Mm-hmm.
jump to, because you said, look, if Elizabeth had been there at the beginning, this would
Mm-hmm.
not have been the outcome. So
Mm-hmm.
some of the listeners, who do not know you, don't know your situation, they
Mm-hmm.
may, there may be a little gap here. So before we jump to what early representation looks like, because we definitely want to talk about that, because this zealous advocacy came so late, can we go back to the Supreme Court? Like, what happened there? What was the ultimate decision?
So Elizabeth became my attorney right after adjudication. And at this time, my visits had stopped with my oldest son. So there was already this plan to literally sever the bond between my children and I. And that was like the basis of their argument, was that I no longer had a bond with my children. So therefore my children needed to stay in that same placement. And at that moment, they were already moving towards terminating my parental rights. Elizabeth was my attorney on at my TPR hearing. Very well prepped. Like we had to do a lot of cross examination. She prepped me for that. My family came up, like testimony as well on my character. Unfortunately, the judge still decided to terminate my parental rights so that my children could be adopted out.
And then did Elizabeth represent you again when you appealed that?
She did. And I often say too, if I had the attorneys that I had prior, they definitely wouldn't have even taken it that far. Like they would have just been like, the TPR, that's just the end of it. But we did take it to the Supreme Court of Appeals. And they still sided with Durham County. They wrote like a 90-page report on it, basically saying that they didn't think I harmed my children, but yet they did not think that TPR was punitive.
So what did that moment clarify for you about how the system works?
I almost cursed. um, it's just a bunch of BS, and that's the simplest way that I can put it, as authentic as I can put it, because I mean, I literally fought so hard, like so hard. Everything that they asked me to do, my parenting classes, the parental capacity assessment. I would do random drug screens, even though I never had any substance use problems. I did mental health. I did therapy. I did all of the things. I had supervised visits and showed how well I interacted with my children. I had family members who submitted character references like she's a great mom. I also had family and community who were in support of me, who, like I said earlier, who could have very well taken custody of my children, but they were completely overlooked. And in that moment, I think I just I really, I mean, I feel like I realized it earlier on when they weren't placing my children with family, but I just think that it's like it didn't matter. And it made me feel like, this is what they do to people, like, and they really want parents to just give up. Like, just give up. Like, that was the last thing that they could have done, right, to resolve. Like, you didn't have to terminate my parental rights, but you needed to and wanted to so that my children could stay into that same placement. And that was the narrative that they created. And terminating my parental rights allowed them to uphold that narrative.
All right, let's close one loop, and then I do want to jump into early legal representation. I also want to say, if you were fully authentic, you probably would have cursed, but
Yes.
I'll give it to you. Just one loop for the listeners, because you mentioned being in jail. Were you convicted?
No. So I was charged with felony child abuse and felony child negligence. I sat in jail for 8 months on a $250,000 bond. I don't have any prior criminal history. I was able to get out because the bond schedule changed in Durham, so I did get out on pretrial. But my charges were dismissed in 2020. Yeah, and the DA just wished me well. She wrote like a full email, like, go and get your children. So I took that paperwork to A&D court, like, here's me proving my innocence. You should give me my children back now. And they did not.
So, recap: no charges, fully compliant with court, still couldn't get through the legal hurdles. So, and I still want to reiterate with Elizabeth, it sounds like to me that she really never had an opportunity to fight forward for you. Still, it was just undoing all of the missed opportunities to actually fight for you over
Correct.
those couple of years, never really having an opportunity just to file motions to show your progress, file motions
Right.
to get visitation. I don't hear that. It's just I'm cleaning up, I'm cleaning up, I'm cleaning up, I'm cleaning. I know I don't actually get to advocate and fight for Toia. And so it sounds like today the two of you are fighting for other families. So you helped start Carolina Parent Defenders. What is the goal of that work? Like, what are you trying to change for families?
So I never would have thought that I would have started a full-on organization with my attorney, right? But it came from the realization and just the need of me navigating the system and not having any support. Like, I remember when I first even realized that I had a CPS case or that there was going to be an investigation, and I was just like Googling. And I was like, where do I go? Like, who do I call? What do I do? And there wasn't any information. Like, I could only call family members and they didn't know, it was just like, just comply. Like, everybody just kept saying, just comply and just make sure you just do whatever they say in order for you to get your children back. So I thought that, like, complying was what would represent how I am as a mother. Like, I didn't think that, like, they were just going to dismiss everything. So starting CPD for me, I think the most important part about it is that parents are able to have that connection prior to a petition being filed in court. I think just having the basis of being able to know your rights or what you can and can't do, and just having someone in your corner to be able to just call on and just to be able to just ask simple questions like, how do I adequately fight for my family when, this system is invading my whole entire home and life?
All right. So for those who are listening or watching right now and they don't have, they don't want to make a beeline to the website, like, give us an elevator pitch. Like, what is Carolina Parent Defenders?
So Carolina Parent Defenders is a free legal services office that provides holistic, real fight for parents who are navigating the system. And that could be a family who already has a CPS case, or it could be a family who is being investigated by police.
All right. So what does it look like once you get connected to Carolina Parent Defenders? Because you talked about when you had your involvement, you couldn't even find basic rights information, navigation, anything. So now that you all exist, what do you do? What do you do when someone reaches out to you, and how do they? Like, what does that process look like?
So right now we currently have a hotline, and so you can call the hotline to see if we're able to take your case. Right now we're in Durham County and Person County. If families are outside of those counties, we'll still like help with like basic like know your rights or give them like a toolkit as far as like how does court work, what are the processes of court, what are some things that you could be advocating for on your own, and just like the basic overview of what the process is going to look like. If someone already has an attorney and like say that attorney isn't advocating for them, whether they have like simple questions, like what is this motion I need to file, or we can offer like direct assistance depending on like what their case like looks like. And that's through like follow up with our director of collaborative defense. So it's basically we have an attorney, we have an investigator, and then we have me. So I'm more of like that emotional support. Margot is more of the wraparound services, whether a parent needs to find parenting classes, mental health classes, anything like that. And then we have two attorneys right now on staff. We just hired an additional attorney as well.
All right, so you have an interdisciplinary team there. So patterns, I don't know if you can speak to this or not, people that are calling the hotline that haven't had your all's support yet, where do you commonly see things going wrong? Because you mentioned in your situation that ICPC paperwork was like a really big factor. What is like a common thing that is not happening before people have your kind of support?
I feel like people feeling like that they don't have support at all. Like they'll get assigned an attorney and they cannot get in contact with their attorney. I feel like a lot of parents feel like they aren't being heard. Their position on wanting their children home is not being told in the courtroom, and really not having a voice. Like the attorney doesn't even speak up on their behalf, as far as like advocating for either reunification or advocating for visitation, whatever that parent is saying that they actually want and need, they don't feel supported. And I see that all the time.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a hard question. So how do you handle situations where safety is a real concern and decisions have to be made quickly? So where children do need to be protected, but families still need due process.
I would definitely say in that case, it's about identifying who can be that support. Like maybe some children can't be in their homes, right? Well, who's that next point of contact in that family that could help support, navigating that child into a safe environment? And then let's pour into the original family. Like, let's pour into that parent. Maybe she needs, substance use treatment. Maybe she needs therapy for something. Maybe, it could be different resources that are needed. But I definitely think it's about identifying who's in that child's community that could maybe step in place of the parents during that time. And I think also it's really about supporting the family so then that child can still be wrapped around the people that they know and wrapped around their community. But we're just stepping in as that additional support.
And I want to pull this word again because this I loved it, and I think the listeners need to hear it. The relationship, the engagement. You wouldn't know who's in that child's life or who could step in if you don't have a relationship with the parents, with the family, to have that context. You don't know if they're part of a church. You don't know if they have neighbors. You don't know who those supportive other people are. And it sounds like with your interdisciplinary model, you have Margot there who's doing that like resource referrals. You're there to relate, to really, people can vent, unpack with you, all of that, just feel heard. That in and of itself can get people to de-escalate for them to be compliant as the court wants them to be compliant, but you have to have trust for people to engage in that way. And then you have the hands-on technical legal. Do you think that having that model lends itself to the relationship more, or is it more of like a mindset thing?
I think it does because you have those like key players in each part of it. So like you said, during my case, my attorney like they didn't even reach out to my family and I gave them a whole list. Like the GAL came to my home one time, but she never talked to family. She didn't come in my supervised visits to see like how I interacted with my children. They didn't care about any of it. They didn't care like at all. So I think it's about having those key people to do those key things and then bringing it all together. I often talk about what does it look like to focus on the village model of having like community to buy in on one family, right? Like the support of just the community caring for each other.
I want to play off of that though, because the village model and community caring for each other can be a protective factor and a good thing and a strength. But also when that's the case, right? When there's family,
Mm-hmm.
when people are a village, things that happen to a parent individually in a case don't just affect that parent, right? If they're interconnected to others. So again,
Mm-hmm.
like termination of parental rights doesn't just affect a parent, it affects
Mm-hmm.
an entire family. So like what does that
Mm-hmm.
mean in practice?
Ugh, it hurts my heart so bad. So I mentioned earlier that I do have additional family. So I have a papa, grandma. So my children have great grandparents, and my papa was born in 1941, and so he's a elder, right? We don't know how long people have on this earth, so like who's to say he will be here when my children turn 18, right? Like what does that look like for him? Like we call, TPR the civil death penalty, and like to my papa, he could leave this earth and never see his great grandchildren again. Like that's something that can't be undone. And so when we talk about TPR, it really is the severance from like history, culture, lineage, and just an entire family, like generations.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up that interconnected piece because you're talking about that as an opportunity, as a way to add strength. Like those people can come in, they add
Mm-hmm.
more safety buffers, and then
Mm-hmm.
in the process of the legal process of the harm, when you're just zeroed in on a parent and their mistakes or their deficits or whatever, it's overlooking, right? That
Mm-hmm.
like you're cutting off one thing that is has a ripple effect and long-term implications on a whole community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, as we think about, I just brought up something that maybe people have not thought about in community or perceptions. What do you think that the public doesn't understand about termination of parental rights?
I don't even know if the public knows it's happening. I would say I definitely didn't know it was happening until it happened to me. The thing that was most alarming, or two things that were most alarming to me. So, someone could literally have their parental rights terminated if they are unable to pay child support. Like, that's one thing. If you can't afford to pay child support, you can legally be severed from your child until they turn 18. Another thing that really struck me was that the erasure of a parent's name from a birth certificate, the total disregard that they had of me as a mother, as if I never, carried my children. My name was literally erased from my children's birth certificates. And in North Carolina, adoptions are sealed, so the original birth certificate will not even be there. And then I think another alarming thing for me is that we talk about, yes, it's a termination of my rights, but it's also the termination of my children's right to their own family. I think the numbers were in 2021, I was one in 65,000, but that means that there's 65,000 children who now no longer have a connection to their original, family or original culture or identity.
So what do you think people would see differently if they understood the process better?
I think it's really about looking at, like family as a unit, not disconnecting parents from children, not disconnecting, parents from their parents. It's like the family unit is a whole. If people would just wrap around that family unit and pour into that unit and really assess, like, okay, what does this family really need? Like, every family is different, right? Most families have problems. Like, it's not all just peaches and cream. But, like, how do we identify the needs of each family and also treat every family differently? Like, not come in with like this system box of just, oh well, these children must don't need to be with their parents, and let's take these children and place them into another family and then pour all of our resources into that family and just throw the old family away, like, no.
So family's not interchangeable. And also, I just want to go back. If we have any listeners, if you know of a perfect family doesn't have any problems, please send them our way because we'd love to take some notes. Like, I don't know anyone who doesn't have any problems, but
Yeah.
maybe you're out there. I don't know. It's one thing to think about the public, going back to even when you entered the system and saying like, you want to go to Google and look stuff up and know how to navigate and all of that. So, if there are any families that are listening or people that are working with families that want to give them information, like what is one thing that you wish that families understood about navigating the system, like especially when legal decisions are being made about their future? Because we're talked about like the public not really knowing and understanding like the criteria around termination of parental rights. Like, what do you wish that families knew? Like people that go into the system.
It's not going to be easy. I definitely tell people, like, it's not going to be an easy fight, but definitely don't give up. And it's almost like don't internalize like how the system makes you feel, because to me, I really feel like they wanted me to just break me down, like so that I couldn't fight, And so I definitely tell people like you're gonna have to armor up. Like you need a full garment of armor, okay? Because it's not gonna be easy, and just don't give up the fight.
So don't let the system control your narrative.
Oh, and don't sign anything either. Don't just go signing any paperwork. I feel like that's another thing I tell people. Like, make sure you read. Make sure if you don't like know something, don't just sign it. Actually do the research about it or call me or So yeah.
And that's a good note here. So if people did want to call you, like how would they get in touch with you? How would they follow your work? If they're in Durham, North Carolina, like again, how do they reach the hotline?
The website is carolinaparentdefenders.org. It's 919-907-0091. That's the number to the hotline.
All right, Toia. Well, this conversation focuses on a part of the system that doesn't always get enough attention. Because once a family's involved, a question isn't what the system is designed to do. It's how decisions are made in real time and who is able to influence those decisions. So what we heard highlights the role that legal representation can play in shaping that experience and how different the trajectory can look depending on the support that a family has. And it asks a broader question. What does it actually take to ensure families are given a fair chance once they enter the system? So thank you, Toia, for sharing your perspective and for your work.
Thank you for having me, Valerie.
That was my conversation with Toia Potts. This episode focuses on a part of the system that often stays out of view. Because once a family is involved, the question isn't just what the system is designed to do, it's how decisions are made and who has the ability to influence them. What we heard highlights how much legal representation can shape that experience and how different outcomes can look depending on the support a family has. You can learn more about Toia's work through Carolina Parent Defenders in the show notes. You can also learn more about the upcoming Black Mothers March. Be sure to follow the podcast for new episodes. You can rate and review on your favorite platform and share this episode with others working toward the future of family well-being. We thank the Annie E. Casey Foundation for their continued support. And thanks to our sponsor, Sunlight. Sunlight connects families and professionals in the child welfare system with innovative technology tools that improve communication, protection, trust, and transparency for better outcomes. Community Insight is produced in partnership with Imagination Factory and 14th Street Studios. Thanks to Matt Anderson, Tavon Lewis, Michael Osborne, and Morgan Honecker. The opinions and conclusions expressed in the podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Annie E. Casey Foundation.